Let's have a discussion around whether or not a man abuses you because he really wants to do it to his mother. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I have a question from a commenter here. She says, have you ever experienced in your practice how it seems that a man will punish his mother through his partner? I experienced this with my ex-husband. All of his anger and frustration and hatred for his mother he seemed to not be able to express to her, but he would take it out on me. It was almost as if me and his mother were reversed in his mind. Things that she did to him, he accused me of, and vice versa. Oh, so this is a great question, and this is something that I have seen. Um, I've seen quite a bit where men have rage and animosity towards their mother, but they seem to be unable to take it out on their mother. So, and I've kind of talked about this to a certain degree, I believe, but I can certainly go over it again. So there's a lot of men. There's a lot of men who have grown up in households where abuse was very prevalent, physical, sexual, all of the things, right? But um, with respect to their mother and their father or a male figure in the home or whoever their caretakers were. So if you have different types of caretakers, then, just reverse the roles. Uh, but for the purposes of this, we'll talk about a mom and a dad, just to keep it simple. So there are men who grew up in homes where they saw their mothers getting abused by the man in that home, or they could have seen mutual combat where their parents just abuse each other. Either way, they can feel. They could feel number one. They could feel a sense of duty in terms of having to protect their mother. So, they may have grown up way too soon by witnessing the abuse and maybe even trying to jump in to rescue or help their mother after the abuse took place. They may have jumped in between some fights. They may have had to get physical with their mother's aggressor, just to name a few of those things. So there can be this sense of duty to protect their mother and just a sense of sort of feeling sorry for her or having it being ingrained in their mind to always protect their mother, right? That's like a diehard lesson. And even sometimes, even when they have that, they can still have that sense of a lack of respect for their mother. Just seeing her being harmed in that way, there can also be a lack of respect for her. And they can still, just from witnessing that, pull from it lessons in terms of how men and women are supposed to interact in relationships with each other. Another thing that happens that I've talked about also over the years has been when their mother has grown up or their mother has been in relationships with men that aren't so good. Or, whenever the male partner leaves their mother, the mother turns around and abuses her son. So if dad has left the home, mother will then, who might have been a victim before, will turn around and take it out on her son through overly disciplining, through becoming physically abusive, through telling the son, I hate you, you look just like your damn daddy. Some of that sort of rhetoric, that kind of stuff also tends to come out. And so where a son may have tried to rescue his mother or felt bad for his mother or was just all around afraid, he has now become the victim, to where his mother is just lashing out against him. And so she's essentially terrorizing him, and there may have been a sense of fear. As an adult man, when he's around his mother, there may be a sense of still of regressing back to a boy when he's around his mother. So, and a boy can't really stand up to his mother. He might not like her. He might be afraid of her. He might be angry with her. He might not have respect for her, but because his mind's his mental reverts back to being a boy. He can't actually verbalize that with her or express his anger towards her. So he has to respect his mom, he has to obey his mother. And so what he will do is what she did, which is take it out on someone who he deems to be weaker or lesser than him, aka his wife. People can and do get triggered by their mothers. They do it all the time, especially if their mothers are still, and I talked about when mothers abuse them when they're a boy, but a lot of times mother can still abuse their son well into manhood. Um, oh gosh, a good example of this would be the movie Antoine Fisher. When she grew up when he grew up, and I think it was his foster mother though, but she grew up calling him the N word and doing all sorts of things that were inappropriate with him until he left the home, but he was still a man. And when he came back some years later and knocked on the door, she talked to him the very same way she did when he was a boy, calling him out of his name and all of that kind of stuff. So he brings all those memories back, those trauma memories. And so people can and do get triggered by trauma and by actions that take place and react based off of that. So men are no different in terms of being triggered and then just sort of lashing out because they don't know how to appropriately manage those feelings or to appropriately verbalize those feelings. Something I used to deal with men in prison all the time. So an example of this would be like if I left, or if I was on vacation, which didn't happen a whole lot, but if I was ever on vacation for a little bit and I came back, from vacation, I was met with anger, and rage and things like that. So they would just blah, blah, blah. Dr. Jones, you this, you that, you're terrible. I need to report you to your supervisor. This is, you're unprofessional. You just take off like that. Where the hell have you been? Just some, and it's, I'm just kind of vaguely giving you some of the stuff that I would get. And, you would think that like an exorcism had taken, just some stuff, but these men would just go off the walls. And really what was happening was that their abandonment wound was triggered, and they had gotten frightened that I was going to leave corrections and not come back, and so I was met with all types of vitriol upon my return. Every time it happened, never without fail, I would just be met with that because abandonment wounds are triggered and they do not like change. And these are men with extreme personality disorders. Or symptoms in the extreme range, anyhow. And so, that abandonment wound is triggered and they react with volatility and nastiness. You would be, sometimes they might get up and walk out. I don't even want to talk to you. You've pissed me off so bad, that kind of stuff. And so that kind of stuff happens. And every time I would have to walk them through it, use your voice, walk through your emotions and tell me how you're feeling, what's going on, and just sort of slow down, think before acting, that type of stuff. And so it would be, just having them walk through it. But, the other thing too is, these men, they felt safe with me. And when people feel safe with you, you may kind of get it worse than everybody else. So safe, more vulnerable, those kinds of things. But like if you're going to be there and listen, they'll kind of get everything out that they never got out with the person who actually really abandoned them. So I hope that helps. I know this is all that I can talk about in 10 minutes, but let me know if there's any questions. Thanks so much.